Massive floods from Hurricane Harvey continue their sweep across Texas, and more water has been predicted to fall, with at least 30 people already reported dead and untold devastation on the way. The Israeli humanitarian organization IsraAID has sprung into action to help. Well, with me in the studio now to tell us more is co-CEO of IsraAID, Yotam Polizer. Thank you so much for joining us.
For having me.
So this is obviously a very intense time, as it always is for your organization, but IsraAID has already made it to Houston. Can you tell us a little bit about the work that you guys are doing on the ground?
So we have actually two teams that are on the ground now. The first team arrived already yesterday, and the second team arrived today. We have, our team is doing two types of activities.
Okay.
The first thing is actual support with the relief distribution and the debris removal of all the people, who lost their houses, who lost everything they had, basically. So we have a 5-people, very professional team that's focusing on that. We're working very closely with the local government, the Red Cross, an amazing organization called Team Rubicon that's made out of a lot of veterans, and of course the Jewish community who suffered a lot in this terrible disaster. And the second part is providing psychological support for the people who are already evacuated and are stuck in the shelters and are waiting for news about everything they had. Some of them, lost their loved ones. So both the psychological and the physical is really important at this stage. And we're already there, and we're planning to see more and more teams, because it's going to take a while.
I mean, I think the devastation here, nobody really understood how big it would be. And I think what's also interesting is that IsraAID typically is not going to the United States to do this type of work, right?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's a very interesting and hectic time for us. Just in the last 2 weeks, we responded to a terrible flooding where more than 1,000 people lost their lives in Nepal, India, and Bangladesh.
Which we're not really seeing that much on the news.
Which is a different issue. And terrible mudslides in Sierra Leone, where we had a team that was based there since the Ebola and are still there and was again able to respond. So it's a very hectic time. You're right that the U.S. is not our typical place, but we did actually operate in Hurricane Katrina, in Hurricane Sandy, in the recent flooding in Louisiana, in Baton Rouge. We do see that we have an added value. First of all, the devastation is beyond words, and we're seeing the news. And also, the specific expertise that we're bringing is something that is still a big gap even in the US.
How long do you predict the IsraAID team is going to be there on the ground?
It's remained to be seen. We're, unlike in typical crises like that in the US, we typically stayed for 1 to 3 months. Here it actually could take longer. It will obviously depend on the type of support and the needs that we identify on the ground. But in terms of the debris removal and the psychological support, there is work here for 6 months, if not more.
Right. It's interesting, but how do you come to that number? How do you get to those checkpoints when you know your work is done in a place like this? Because I can imagine that's a very fine line.
It's a fine line, and you could, in a way, you can always find more things to do. But we get, daily reports from our teams on the ground, and we have a lot of work in other parts of the world, so we're very careful about picking where we're going to invest our very limited resources and time and efforts. And you can see when the big mass of people are going back to their homes or are already based in temporary housing, for example, when people receive the local services, whether it's psychological or medical support, that means it's time for us to move on. And that's our goal. Our goal is not to be needed.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess the final question that we have is just for our viewers, for those of us who want to help, especially IsraAID, how can they do that? So
we have, if you go on our website, IsraAID.org, we have our campaign, our fundraising campaign that you can see on the screen here. And we're looking for any kind of support, because even a small donation goes a long way. We're also looking for professionals who wants to join the team, either in the US or here. We're looking for professionals, so we can't, unfortunately, take anyone who wants to go.
So that could be therapists, doctors, psychologists.
So it's mostly people with either psychological skills, social workers, therapists, psychologists, etc., or people who have specific experience with disaster management and debris removal. We have a great team, but we always look for more people.
Of course. Well, thank you so much for coming in, Yotam. As always, we are very proud that we can say your organization comes from this country and are proud of the work that you do.
Thank you very much.